What if everything holding you back is actually your refusal to accept what's holding you back? What if your greatest weakness isn't lack of ability, but excess of resistance? The world's most successful people share a secret that sounds like defeat but creates victory. They've learned to accept three things that most people spend their entire lives fighting. First, they accept that control is an illusion, so they stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable. Second, they accept that everyone is different, so they stop expecting others to think like them. Third, they accept that failure is inevitable, so they stop fearing it and start using it. These aren't feel-good platitudes or philosophical musings. They're practical strategies that create millionaires, save marriages, and build empires. But they require you to do the one thing you've been trained never to do. Accept. There's a moment in every successful person's life when they stop fighting reality and start working with it. That moment changes everything. A 42-year-old executive sat in his car outside a foreclosed home, his company bankrupt, his marriage ending, his confidence shattered. 3 years later, that same man was running a multi-million-dollar enterprise and living the life he'd always dreamed of. What changed? He learned to accept three fundamental truths that most people spend their entire lives resisting, you see. We're taught from childhood to fight, to push, to never give up. But there's a paradox hidden in that advice. Sometimes the very act of fighting keeps us stuck. Sometimes the resistance itself becomes our prison. The most successful people in the world have discovered a secret that sounds counterintuitive, but works like magic. Acceptance is the gateway to transformation. Think about water for a moment. When it encounters an obstacle, it doesn't try to smash through. It accepts the barrier and finds another way. It flows around, over or under. Eventually, that same gentle water can carve through solid rock, creating magnificent canyons. That's the power of acceptance in action. The executive in that car made a decision that night. Instead of cursing his circumstances, blaming others, or wallowing in self-pity, he chose to accept three specific realities. First, he accepted that some things were simply beyond his control. The economy had crashed, his biggest client had gone under, and no amount of anger would change that. Second, he accepted that the people around him, his employees, his ex-wife, his competitors, were different from him, with their own motivations, fears, and ways of thinking. Third, he accepted that his failures were not verdicts on his worth, but stepping stones to his success. These three acceptances didn't just change his mindset, they revolutionized his actions. When you stop wasting energy on what you can't control, you suddenly have tremendous power to change what you can. When you stop expecting others to think and act like you, you become a master at understanding and influencing people. When you stop fearing failure, you start taking the bold actions that lead to breakthrough success. But here's what most people get wrong about acceptance. They think it means giving up, being passive, or settling for less. Nothing could be further from the truth. Real acceptance is active, not passive. It's strategic, not defeatist. It's the beginning of true power, not the end of ambition. Consider the greatest athletes in the world. They accept the rules of their sport completely. A basketball player doesn't waste time wishing the hoop were lower or the court were smaller. They accept these unchangeable elements and then pour all their energy into what they can control, their skills, their conditioning, their strategy. That's why they win. The same principle applies to every area of life. In business, the most successful entrepreneurs accept market realities, customer preferences, and competitive pressures. Then they innovate within those constraints. In relationships, the happiest couples accept each other's core personalities rather than trying to change them. In personal development, the people who transform their lives accept their starting point without judgment. then work systematically to improve. Each of these three acceptances requires its own understanding and approach. Some people find it easier to accept external circumstances but struggle to accept other people's differences. Others can accept people but can't accept their own failures. The key is to master all three because they work together synergistically. When you accept what you can't control, you stop being a victim of circumstances. When you accept that others are different, you stop being frustrated by people. When you accept failure as part of success, you stop being paralyzed by fear. Together, these three acceptances create a mindset of unstoppable achievement. The executive who sat in his car that night went on to build his new company differently. He accepted that economic downturns would happen, so he built flexibility into his business model. He accepted that his employees had different work styles and motivations, so he created systems that leveraged their strengths. He accepted that some ventures would fail, so he tested ideas quickly and cheaply before scaling up. This is the path available to you right now. Not someday when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready, right now. In whatever circumstances you find yourself, the power of acceptance is waiting for you to claim it. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're accepting and how to do it effectively. A commercial airline pilot with 30 years of experience was flying through the worst storm of his career. The plane shook violently, passengers screamed, and even the crew looked worried. But the pilot remained remarkably calm. When asked later how he maintained such composure, he smiled and said, "I learned long ago to focus only on what's in my control. I can't control the weather, but I can control how I fly through it." This pilot understood something that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. He knew that life divides into two circles, things we can control and things we cannot. Most people waste enormous energy trying to control the uncontrollable. They worry about the economy, complain about their boss, stress over what others think, and exhaust themselves fighting reality. Meanwhile, the truly successful put all their energy into their circle of control and waste none on what lies outside it. Think about your own life for a moment. How much time did you spend last week worrying about things you couldn't change? The weather, traffic, other people's decisions, past mistakes, future uncertainties. Now, imagine if you had invested all that mental and emotional energy into things you could actually influence. Your skills, your attitude, your actions, your responses. That's the difference between spinning your wheels and moving forward. The concept seems simple, but the practice requires discipline. Our brains are wired to focus on threats and problems, even when we can't do anything about them. It's an evolutionary leftover from when constant vigilance meant survival. But in today's world, this tendency creates chronic stress and prevents us from achieving our potential. Let me tell you about a restaurant owner who learned this lesson the hard way. For years, she complained about everything outside her control. The economy was bad. Competitors were unfair. Customers were difficult. Suppliers were unreliable. She spent hours every day frustrated and angry. And her business reflected her mindset. It was struggling. Her staff was demoralized, and she was miserable. Then something shifted. During a particularly difficult period, she realized she was exhausting herself fighting battles she couldn't win. She made a decision to focus exclusively on what she could control. Instead of complaining about the economy, she improved her menu and service. Instead of worrying about competitors, she created unique experiences for her customers. She trained her staff to handle any situation professionally. The transformation was remarkable. Within 6 months, her restaurant was thriving, not because external circumstances changed. They didn't. But because she stopped wasting energy on them and redirected it toward areas where she had power. Her staff noticed her new attitude and became more engaged. Customers felt the positive atmosphere and returned more often. Success, this principle applies to every area of life. In your career, You can't control whether your company downsizes, but you can control how valuable you make yourself. You can't control your boss's personality, but you can control how you communicate and perform. You can't control market conditions, but you can control your skills and adaptability. In relationships, you can't control how others feel or what they do, but you can control how you treat them. You can't make someone love you, but you can be lovable. You can't force people to respect you, but you can be respectable. You can't change someone's personality, but you can change how you respond to it. Even in health, while you can't control your genetics or prevent all illnesses, you can control your diet, exercise, sleep, and stress management. You can't stop aging, but you can age well. You can't eliminate all risks, but you can minimize them through smart choices. The challenge is that our circle of concern is usually much larger than our circle of control. We worry about national politics, global warming, crime rates, and countless other issues that we can barely influence. This doesn't mean we shouldn't care about these things, but we shouldn't let them dominate our thoughts and drain our energy. Here's a practical exercise that will change your life if you apply it consistently. Every morning, write down everything that's concerning you. Then divide the list into 2 columns, things you can control and things you cannot. For the items you can't control, practice letting them go. Say to yourself, I acknowledge this concern, but I choose to focus my energy elsewhere. For the items you can control, create specific action steps. A sales manager used this technique during a recession when his industry was struggling. His initial list of concerns was long: economic downturn, company budget cuts, team morale, competitor pricing, customer reluctance, his mortgage payments, his children's college funds. When he sorted them, he realized he could control only a few things: his own effort, his team's training, his customer relationships, and his personal finances. He stopped watching economic news obsessively and started spending that time calling customers. He stopped complaining about budget cuts and started finding creative ways to motivate his team without money. He stopped worrying about competitors and started focusing on providing exceptional value. Within a year, while others in his industry were failing, he was exceeding his targets. The power of this acceptance goes beyond practical results. When you stop fighting the uncontrollable, you experience profound peace. Stress diminishes, clarity increases, and energy multiplies. You become like that pilot in the storm, calm, focused, effective. You make better decisions because you're not clouded by frustration or anger. But remember, accepting what you can control doesn't mean being passive about life. It means being strategic about where you invest your effort. It's like a chess master who accepts the rules of the game completely, then uses brilliant strategy within those constraints. The acceptance itself becomes a source of power. This is your invitation to join the ranks of the most successful people in history. They all learned this secret. True power comes not from controlling everything, but from mastering what you can control while accepting what you cannot. When you make this shift, you'll find that your circle of influence actually expands. By focusing on what you can control, you become more effective, which gives you more influence over circumstances that previously seemed beyond your reach. The storm will always be there. Economic uncertainty, difficult people, unexpected challenges, they're part of life. But like that pilot, you can learn to fly through them with skill and grace. You can't control the weather, but you can become an expert at navigating it. That's the first acceptance that will transform your life. Master it, and you're ready for the second. A brilliant software engineer was promoted to manage a team of 20 developers. Within 3 months, half his team had requested transfers. Productivity had plummeted, and he was on the verge of being demoted. He couldn't understand it. He was giving his team the same clear, logical instructions he'd want to receive. He was treating them exactly as he'd want to be treated. So why was everything falling apart? The answer lay in a fundamental misconception that sabotages countless relationships, careers, and businesses. He assumed everyone thought, felt, and worked the way he did. When they didn't respond to his communication style, he thought they were being difficult. When they needed different types of motivation, he thought they were lazy. When they processed information differently, he thought they were slow. He was wrong on all counts. The turning point came during a leadership workshop where he took a personality assessment alongside his team. The results shocked him. Out of 20 team members, only 2 shared his communication style. The others had completely different ways of processing information, making decisions, and finding motivation. Some needed detailed, step-by-step instructions. He preferred big-picture goals. Some wanted regular check-ins and encouragement. He liked to work independently. Some made decisions based on feelings and values. He relied purely on logic and data for the first time. He realized that his team wasn't broken, they were just different. And those differences weren't weaknesses to be fixed, but strengths to be leveraged. This recognition changed everything. Instead of forcing everyone into his mold, he started adapting his approach to each person. He gave detailed instructions to those who needed them, and autonomy to those who thrived with freedom. He scheduled regular one-on-ones with people who needed connection and left others alone to work in peace. The transformation was dramatic. Within 6 months, his team became the highest performing group in the company, not because the people changed, but because he finally accepted and worked with their differences instead of against them. He discovered what all great leaders know. Success comes not from surrounding yourself with clones, but from orchestrating a symphony of different instruments. This principle extends far beyond the workplace. In marriages, the divorce rate would plummet if people truly accepted that their partners are fundamentally different. Instead of trying to change each other, successful couples learn to appreciate and complement their differences. The organized partner handles planning, while the spontaneous one brings excitement. The emotional partner provides warmth, while the logical one offers stability. They become stronger together than either could be alone. Think about your own relationships. How often do you get frustrated because someone doesn't see things your way? How much energy do you waste trying to convince others to think like you? How many conflicts arise simply because you expect others to process the world through your lens? A mother struggled for years with her teenage daughter. The mother was practical, organized, and focused on security. The daughter was creative, spontaneous, and driven by passion. Every conversation became a battle. The mother pushed college and stable career paths. The daughter dreamed of art and adventure. Both felt misunderstood and unloved. Everything changed when the mother finally accepted that her daughter wasn't rebelling, she was simply wired differently. Instead of seeing the daughter's artistic dreams as impractical, she started seeing them as valid expressions of a different personality. She stopped pushing her own path and started helping her daughter find hers. Their relationship transformed from constant conflict to mutual respect and support. This acceptance of differences is particularly crucial in our increasingly connected world. We work with people from different cultures, backgrounds, and generations. The traditional command and control leadership style fails because it assumes everyone responds to the same motivators. The new model recognizes that some people are motivated by recognition, others by challenge, others by security, and still others by meaning. A multinational company discovered this when they tried to implement a one-size-fits-all incentive program. In some countries, public recognition motivated employees. In others, it caused embarrassment. Some cultures responded to individual bonuses. Others preferred team rewards. Some valued flexible schedules over money. Others wanted clear structure and higher pay. The program failed until they accepted these differences and created multiple options that honored different values and motivations, but accepting differences doesn't mean accepting poor performance or bad behavior. Standards and expectations remain important. The key is recognizing that there are many different ways to meet those standards. A sales team might have one member who succeeds through detailed preparation and analysis, another through natural charisma and relationship building, and a third through persistence and follow-up. All can achieve excellent results through their own methods. The challenge in accepting others' differences is that our brains are wired for tribal thinking. We naturally trust and understand people who are like us and feel suspicious of those who aren't. This served our ancestors well when survival depended on group cohesion, but in today's diverse world, it limits our success. Here's how to overcome this limitation and harness the power of differences. First, become curious instead of judgmental. When someone approaches a problem differently, ask yourself, what can I learn from this perspective? Instead of, why can't they see it my way? Second, look for the strengths in each difference. The person who seems overly cautious might save you from costly mistakes. The one who seems too emotional might help you connect with customers on a deeper level. Third, communicate in their style, not yours. If someone needs data to make decisions, give them spreadsheets, not stories. If they process emotionally, share how decisions will impact people, not just bottom lines. If they're visual learners, use diagrams instead of lengthy emails. This isn't manipulation, it's respect. A CEO learned this lesson when his company was struggling with innovation. He kept hiring people just like himself, analytical, careful, methodical. They made few mistakes, but also few breakthroughs. Finally, he deliberately hired several people who were his complete opposite: intuitive, risk-taking, creative. The clash was initially uncomfortable, but it produced the fresh ideas his company desperately needed. The most successful people understand that differences are not obstacles to overcome, but resources to leverage. They build teams with complementary strengths. They seek out advisors who see blind spots they miss. They marry partners who balance their weaknesses. They don't just tolerate differences, they actively pursue them. And this acceptance requires humility. It means acknowledging that your way isn't the only way, or even necessarily the best way. It means recognizing that someone with completely different approaches might achieve better results than you in certain situations. It means letting go of the need to be right and embracing the goal of being effective. When you truly accept that others are different, several magical things happen. Conflicts decrease because you stop taking differences personally. Collaboration improves because you leverage each person's strengths. Innovation flourishes because diverse perspectives generate new solutions. Relationships deepen because people feel seen and valued for who they really are. The software engineer who nearly failed as a manager became one of the company's most successful leaders, not by changing his team, but by accepting them. He learned to see differences not as defects, but as features. His analytical style remained valuable for certain situations, but he now had access to 20 other styles for different challenges. This is the second great acceptance that transforms lives. When you stop expecting everyone to be like you stop being frustrated by humanity and start being fascinated by it. You stop trying to create copies and start conducting orchestras. You stop limiting yourself to one perspective and gain access to dozens. Master this acceptance, and you're ready for the third. A 53-year-old woman stood before a room of venture capitalists, pitching her 7th business idea. Her previous 6 companies had failed. She had lost investors' money, disappointed employees, and exhausted her savings. Most people would have quit after the 3rd failure, certainly after the 5th. But she understood something that separates winners from everyone else. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a required ingredient. That woman went on to build a $100 million company, not despite her failures, but because of them. Each failed business taught her crucial lessons. The first showed her the importance of cash flow. The second revealed the need for strong partnerships. The third taught her about market timing. By the seventh attempt, she had a PhD in what doesn't. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. No one masters it without falling. The falls aren't failures, they're feedback. Each tumble teaches balance, momentum, and steering. The child who never falls never learns. The same principle applies to every significant achievement in life. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. When asked about it, he said, "I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work." Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Stephen King's first novel was rejected 30 times. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. These aren't stories of overcoming failure. They're stories of embracing it. The fear of failure paralyzes more dreams than actual failure ever could. People stay in safe but unfulfilling jobs because they are afraid to risk starting a business. They remain in mediocre relationships because they fear being alone. They avoid pursuing their passions because they might not succeed. But here's the truth. The biggest failure is never trying. When you accept failure as part of success, you start playing a different game. Instead of avoiding risks, you take calculated ones. Instead of hiding mistakes, you analyze them for lessons. Instead of seeing setbacks as verdicts, you see them as data. You fail faster, learn quicker, and succeed sooner. A startup founder put this philosophy into practice. Instead of spending years perfecting his product in secret, he launched a rough version quickly. It failed spectacularly, but the failure provided invaluable customer feedback. He adjusted and launched again, failed again, adjusted again. After 15 rapid failures and improvements, he had a product customers loved. His competitors, still perfecting their first versions in private, never caught up. The key is changing your relationship with failure. Stop seeing it as shameful and start seeing it as useful. Stop taking it personally and start taking it professionally. Stop letting it define you and start letting it refine you. Every failure brings you closer to success if you're paying attention. This acceptance doesn't mean being careless or celebrating incompetence. It means understanding that in any worthwhile endeavor, failure is not just possible, it's inevitable. The question isn't whether you'll fail, but how you'll respond when you do. Will you quit or learn? Will you hide or grow? Will you let failure stop you or propel you? When you accept failure as your teacher, not your enemy, you join the ranks of every great achiever in history. You stop playing not to lose and start playing to win. That's the third acceptance that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary successes. 3 years after that night in his car, the bankrupt executive stood before an audience of entrepreneurs, sharing his story. But he didn't talk about the business strategies that rebuilt his fortune or the networking that opened new doors. Instead, he talked about 3 acceptances that changed everything. I used to fight reality every single day, he told them. When the economy tanked, I spent months raging against it. When my employees didn't work like I did, I tried to force them into my mold. When my first business failed, I took it as proof I wasn't meant to succeed. I was exhausted from fighting battles I could never win. He paused, looking at the eager faces before him. Then I learned to accept, not give up, accept. I accepted that I couldn't control the economy, but I could control my response to it. So I built a business model that thrived in any condition. I accepted that my team members were wired differently. So I learned to speak their languages and leverage their unique strengths. Our productivity tripled. Most importantly, he continued, I accepted that my failures weren't verdicts. They were education. My bankruptcy taught me cash flow management. My failed partnerships taught me due diligence. My broken marriage taught me the importance of presence over presence. Every failure became a foundation stone for future success. The transformation went beyond business. His relationships deepened when he stopped trying to change people. His stress disappeared when he stopped fighting unchangeable circumstances. His confidence soared when he stopped fearing failure. The three acceptances created a compound effect, each one reinforcing and amplifying the others. Here's what nobody tells you about acceptance, he said, leaning forward. It's not passive. It's the most powerful action you can take. When you accept what you can't control, you channel all your energy into what you can. When you accept that others are different, you multiply your capabilities by accessing their strengths. When you accept failure as feedback, you accelerate your learning curve exponentially. He shared one final story. Last month, my biggest client called to cancel their contract. 40% of our revenue, gone, 3 years ago. I would have panicked, blamed, and fought. Instead, I accepted it immediately. Within an hour, my team and I were brainstorming opportunities this created. The freed up resources let us pursue 3 smaller clients we'd been too busy to properly serve. We replaced the revenue within 60 days and built a more diversified, stable business. The audience was silent, absorbing the implications. He smiled. You came here looking for success strategies, but I'm giving you something more fundamental. These 3 acceptances are the operating system that makes all strategies work. Without them, you're pushing a boulder uphill. With them, you're flowing like water, powerful, adaptable, unstoppable. As he left the stage, someone asked, where do we start? He turned back. Start where you are. Look at what you're fighting right now. What circumstances can't you control? Accept them. Which people frustrate you because they're different? Accept them. What failures are you still running from? Accept them. Then watch how quickly acceptance transforms into achievement. The path is open, the choice is yours. Accept and transform.